Hello, thoughtful Libra. August 29 and 30, 2026 may bring a quieter kind of clarity into your life, especially around the places where you have been trying too hard to keep everything balanced. Lately, you may have felt caught between what you want, what other people need, and what would create the least amount of tension, leaving you unsure which voice deserves your attention. But something is beginning to shift, and the important question is no longer how to keep everyone comfortable. It is whether the life you are protecting still feels honest to you. You may be realizing that keeping the peace has sometimes meant carrying more than your share. You have considered every side, softened your words, waited for the right moment, and perhaps postponed decisions because you could see reasons for staying exactly where you were. Now the invitation is different, not to rush, but to become honest enough to choose. Your energy becomes clearer when you stop measuring every decision by how someone else might react and begin asking what actually feels aligned with your values, your needs, and the person you are becoming. You do not need to have the entire path mapped out before you take the next step. Sometimes, clarity arrives after the choice begins to move, not before it. Around August 29, you may notice an emotional pull towards something different, a new routine, a personal shift, a project, or simply a different way of relating to someone close to you. Let yourself notice that feeling without allowing it to dictate your every move. Emotions can reveal what matters, but they do not have to make the decision for you. Think of your emotions less like a storm you have to escape and more like changing light across a room. What feels intense in one moment may look completely different once you give it space. If something stirs you deeply, you do not have to react immediately or turn every feeling into a conclusion. You can pause, breathe, and ask what the feeling is trying to show you. That pause may reveal that what you truly need is not another answer from someone else, but permission to trust your own perception. This is also a powerful moment for releasing what has quietly been taking more from you than it gives back. You may be holding on to a relationship because of its history, maintaining a belief because it once protected you, or staying connected to a path because changing it would disturb the balance around you. But ask yourself honestly, are you preserving something because it still nourishes you, or because letting it go would force you to face what comes next? You do not need to make a dramatic break with everything familiar. Sometimes release begins with one calm decision to stop betraying what you already know. As you create that space, your relationships may begin to feel different too. If you are committed to someone, communication can become more sincere when you no longer feel responsible for managing every emotional current between you. Pay attention to the small moments, the tone of a conversation, the willingness to listen, the way someone responds when you express a need instead of simply accommodating theirs. These details can tell you more than grand declarations, because real harmony is often built quietly through mutual respect and the freedom to be honest without fearing that honesty will destroy the connection. If you have been considering a meaningful change, resist the temptation to ask only whether everyone around you will approve. Ask whether the choice allows you to grow without leaving yourself behind. Whether it concerns work, a personal project, a new routine, or a relationship, the strongest direction may be the one that brings your outer life closer to your inner values. You do not need a dramatic sign telling you that you are ready. Sometimes readiness looks much quieter, like realizing you are no longer willing to remain somewhere simply because leaving would be inconvenient. And if you have been uncertain about what comes next, step away from the noise for a while. Take a walk, sit somewhere peaceful, open a window, or give yourself a few uninterrupted minutes without trying to solve anything. Nature has a way of returning your attention to what is simple and immediate, especially when your mind has been busy weighing possibilities and other people's expectations. In that quiet, you may hear something you have been overlooking, not a prediction, but your own honest response. By August 30, the energy can feel less like searching for the perfect answer and more like recognizing what deserves your attention. You may still have questions, and that is perfectly natural, but you do not need certainty about every detail to make one truthful choice. When you slow down enough to hear yourself, intuition becomes less like a mysterious voice and more like the quiet recognition that something feels right, wrong, nourishing, or draining. Let that awareness inform you without turning it into fear. If you have been feeling emotionally depleted, this is a good time to return to yourself in simple ways. The condition of your surroundings can sometimes reflect how much emotional space you have been carrying. So give yourself permission to make your home feel calmer, softer, and easier to live in. Prepare something nourishing. Take a long shower, clear one neglected corner, or simply rest without treating rest as something you have to earn. Caring for yourself is not selfish, and restoring your energy does not require you to justify why you need it. You may also notice a stronger desire to protect your personal space from people who have become too comfortable crossing your boundaries. Perhaps someone offers opinions where they were never invited, expects access to your time, or assumes you will adjust because you usually do. This time, you may be less willing to smooth everything over, simply to avoid discomfort. A boundary does not have to be harsh to be firm. Sometimes it is simply the quiet decision that your peace matters too. There is an important difference between keeping peace and creating peace. Keeping peace may require you to swallow your feelings, constantly adapt, and pretend something does not bother you. Creating peace asks for honesty, clear limits, and relationships where responsibility moves in both directions. As you begin to understand that difference, you may naturally become more selective about the people and environments you allow close to you. You are being drawn toward connections that encourage growth rather than quietly asking you to remain the same. You may feel less interested in relationships built only on familiarity, and more interested in people who show initiative, emotional maturity, and a genuine willingness to meet you halfway. That does not mean everyone around you must change at your pace, nor does it mean you need to judge anyone for being where they are. It simply means you are becoming more aware of what kind of exchange allows your own energy to remain alive. And somewhere within that realization is the deeper shift. You are learning that balance is not the same thing as keeping every scale perfectly still. Life moves, people change, priorities evolve, and sometimes restoring equilibrium requires you to move one side before the other can settle. You may be entering a period where your choices feel more grounded because they are no longer built entirely around avoiding conflict. Instead, they begin with a quieter question. What would it look like to honor yourself while still leaving room for others? That is where your strength begins to feel different. It is not loud, defensive, or driven by the need to prove that you are right. It is the strength of knowing what you can give, what you can no longer carry, and where your responsibility ends. As you move through these days, you may find that the more honestly you place your own needs back onto the scale, the easier it becomes to recognize which relationships, choices, and directions genuinely belong in the life you're building. Now, you may find yourself preferring people who take responsibility for their own growth. People who bring movement into their lives, instead of asking you to carry the weight of their stagnation. That matters because you are beginning to recognize how easily your natural desire for harmony can turn into over-accommodation, where you keep adjusting yourself simply because it seems easier than creating discomfort. Around August 29 and 30, 2026, this awareness may become especially noticeable, as though you are finally seeing which connections leave room for you to breathe and which ones quietly ask you to become smaller. There is a rebellious quality to this shift, but it does not have to be loud or dramatic. It may feel more like the moment you stop reaching for a door that has never really opened for you, or finally set down something you have been carrying simply because you became used to its weight. You may have spent too long attached to a person, expectation, routine, or emotional pattern that takes more than it gives, and over time, that imbalance can soften your confidence in ways you barely notice. Now something inside you is beginning to resist that pattern, asking you to choose what is honest, rather than what merely keeps everything looking peaceful from the outside. The Hanged Man reversed speaks beautifully to this moment because it can represent the release of suspended energy, especially when you've been waiting for every circumstance and every person involved to become comfortable with your decision. For you, Libra, the deeper question is not simply whether you can make a choice, but whether you can make one without needing everyone else to agree with it first. A situation that has kept you emotionally suspended, perhaps because of distance, uncertainty, or an unresolved connection, may begin to look different once you stop measuring your peace against someone else's reaction. You have a natural ability to see several sides of a situation, and that perspective can be a gift when it helps you understand people with compassion. But there are moments when seeing every side makes it difficult to recognize your own side at all. The reversed Hanged Man asks you to step down from that endless threshold, not because every answer has suddenly appeared, but because remaining undecided can quietly become its own decision. As August 29 gives you space to notice the imbalance, August 30 can carry a quieter sense of willingness to respond differently without turning that shift into a dramatic promise about what must happen. Then comes the star, bringing a softer kind of hope. Its message here is not that everything will instantly become perfect, but that something inside you can begin to feel less crowded once you stop forcing yourself to understand everything at once. The star invites you to trust a small, steady feeling that appears when something is emotionally true, especially after you have spent too much time explaining away your own discomfort. This is especially meaningful in matters of the heart. You may be learning that vulnerability does not require you to abandon discernment, and that keeping your heart open does not mean accepting every situation that asks for your attention. Let the star remind you that hope can be quiet, almost like the first clear patch of sky after a long stretch of gray weather. You do not have to chase it, you only have to notice what becomes visible when the emotional noise begins to settle. Justice carries an especially meaningful place in this reading for Libra, but its message goes deeper than simply being associated with fairness. Justice asks you to consider whether the standards you use with yourself are as compassionate and honest as the standards you use when evaluating everyone else. If a relationship has cooled, if someone's behavior has left you uncertain, or if outside opinions have made you question your own instincts, this energy encourages you to look at the facts without abandoning your feelings. You do not need to condemn anyone in order to recognize that something is no longer balanced. You can acknowledge another person's reasons and still admit that their choices do not work for you. You can understand why someone behaved the way they did without continuing to accept the consequences of that behavior. Justice asks you to bring your actions back into alignment with your values, so that your kindness remains genuine, rather than becoming a way of avoiding difficult truths. The Knight of Cups then introduces a softer emotional current, one connected with sincere gestures, heartfelt communication, creativity, and the possibility of an invitation that feels emotionally meaningful. This does not have to mean a guaranteed romantic event or a specific person appearing at your door. Instead, consider it an opening for more honest emotional exchange, whether that comes through someone you already know, a renewed conversation, a creative impulse, or a connection that feels refreshing because you do not have to perform for it. For you, the important distinction is between being wanted and being understood. Attraction can catch your attention, but emotional sincerity is what gives a connection somewhere deeper to go. If someone enters your emotional space, notice whether their actions create room for you to be yourself, rather than simply giving you another situation where you feel responsible for maintaining the atmosphere. A genuine connection should not require you to constantly adjust your posture just to keep the relationship standing. The Emperor brings another necessary layer into this picture: structure. Where the Knight of Cups opens the heart, the Emperor reminds you that an open heart still needs boundaries, and that compassion becomes healthier when it has a strong foundation underneath it. For Libra, this can be an important counterbalance to the instinct to negotiate endlessly, because sometimes the most peaceful choice is the one that clearly defines what you will and will not accept. Your strength here does not come from becoming rigid. It comes from becoming consistent with yourself. You can remain graceful while saying no, caring while creating distance, and understanding while refusing to participate in patterns that continually drain you. When your values, boundaries, and actions begin moving in the same direction, your sense of stability becomes much less dependent on whether everyone around you is pleased with your choices. When it comes to your well-being, you may also be noticing how closely your surroundings reflect your inner state. Your home, your routines, the way you care for your body, even the atmosphere you return to at the end of the day can tell you something about how much emotional space you actually have. If your surroundings have begun to feel neglected or heavy, try not to turn that into another reason to criticize yourself. Instead, see it as information about what may need gentler attention. Perhaps you've been coming home and immediately disappearing into television, your phone, or endless scrolling because you simply do not have the energy to process everything you have been carrying. That does not make you lazy or incapable. It may simply mean that some part of you has been asking for restoration rather than more demands, and small acts of care can help you hear that request more clearly. Open a window, clear one small surface, prepare something nourishing, take a long shower, or create a quieter corner where your senses can settle. For Libra, beauty can be meaningful when it creates actual ease rather than becoming another standard you feel obligated to maintain. The goal is not to create a perfect environment. It is to make your surroundings feel supportive enough that you can return to yourself. In your professional life, you may be looking for opportunities, while also becoming more selective about what deserves your time. If you are searching for work, it can be tempting to accept every interview or every possibility simply because you want movement. But an opportunity is not automatically a good opportunity just because it arrives. Before rearranging your schedule, traveling across town, or investing your energy into a conversation, consider whether the environment, expectations, communication style, and values actually match what you are trying to build. Your time has value, and so does the emotional energy you bring into a workplace. If something feels misaligned from the beginning, asking better questions can save you from trying to convince yourself later that the situation is right. You are allowed to look beyond the title or the promise and ask whether you would feel respected there, whether your contribution would be recognized, and whether the people around you communicate in a way that supports your ability to thrive. If you are already employed but have begun feeling disconnected from your work, that feeling deserves attention rather than immediate dismissal. A repetitive role does not necessarily mean you need to leave, but it may be showing you where you have stopped growing or where your values are no longer reflected in your daily environment. Let yourself explore possibilities without forcing an immediate answer, especially if the next step needs to be chosen with care rather than urgency. Financially, this same theme of balance becomes important. Your choices around money may be asking you to distinguish between what genuinely supports your life and what you continue maintaining because it represents an expectation, an image, or an old definition of success. Instead of making decisions from pressure or excitement alone, give yourself enough space to ask whether an investment, purchase, side project, or financial commitment actually reflects what matters to you now. The reversed hanged man can symbolize breaking out of financial patterns that have kept you waiting, postponing, or repeating decisions without moving toward a clearer structure. That does not mean rushing into an opportunity. In fact, the wiser expression may be to stop delaying the practical choices you already understand need attention. Review what is draining your resources, what no longer serves a purpose, and where uncertainty has been costing you more energy than the decision itself. You may also notice that your ability to understand different perspectives can be useful when negotiating, comparing options, or considering a new source of income. Just be careful that consideration does not become another form of avoidance. A new proposal or possibility may be worth exploring, but approach it with measured judgment, making sure it fits your values and long-term priorities, rather than simply offering a brief feeling of excitement. The deeper lesson is that prosperity does not have to come from doing more, agreeing more, or keeping every possibility alive. Sometimes it begins when you create enough structure to recognize what deserves your resources and what no longer does. As you bring your choices, relationships, and practical priorities into better alignment, the sense of balance you've been searching for can begin to feel less like something you have to maintain for everyone else, and more like something you are finally learning to live from. The Emperor brings an important reminder that stability is built through structure, especially when it comes to your resources. As August 29 and 30, 2026 unfold, this can be a useful moment to look at your finances with calm attention, organize what has felt scattered, and think beyond the immediate pressure of the moment. For you, Libra, discipline does not have to mean becoming rigid. It can simply mean creating enough structure that your choices are guided by your values rather than by impulse, appearances, or the desire to keep every option open. Then when it comes to love, something meaningful is shifting in the way you understand what you actually want. If you're single, you may be leaving behind romantic ideals that once seemed appealing but no longer fit the person you have become, and that realization can quietly change the kind of connection you are willing to entertain. You may find yourself wanting something more sincere, more emotionally nourishing, and more reciprocal, where you do not have to keep adjusting yourself simply to preserve the relationship. This openness can make room for pleasant surprises, but the important part is the openness itself, rather than a promise of a particular person or event. Let curiosity have more influence than obligation, and notice what happens when you stop asking whether a connection looks right from the outside and start noticing how it actually feels inside you. A relationship can be beautiful and still leave you depleted, while a quieter connection can sometimes bring the kind of ease that allows your real personality to emerge. If you're already in a committed relationship, this energy can soften the space between you and your partner. You may feel more aware of affection, attraction, tenderness, and those small gestures that remind you that love is not only something you discuss, but something you experience through presence, touch, attention, and consideration. You want to feel desired, yes, but beneath that is something even more important. You want to feel valued, respected, and emotionally safe enough to stop performing and simply be yourself. You do not always have to wait for the other person to create that atmosphere. Sometimes a spontaneous kiss, an affectionate touch, a thoughtful message, or an invitation to step away from the usual routine can reopen a door that everyday responsibilities have quietly closed. Let intimacy be less about proving something and more about remembering that two people can choose to meet each other again, even within a relationship that has already existed for some time. If you're single, someone already within your wider circle could begin to appear differently to you, or you may simply become more aware of a connection that you previously overlooked. That does not necessarily mean that romance is guaranteed to develop, but it can create an interesting moment of recognition, especially if you have been viewing people through old assumptions about who is or is not right for you. Give yourself permission to explore the feeling without immediately assigning it a future, because sometimes clarity arrives after you allow an experience to breathe. The family side of your life also carries a quieter opportunity for repair and understanding. Your Libra instinct to see different perspectives can help you approach an old disagreement with more nuance. But remember that understanding someone's position does not require you to erase your own. The reversed Hanged Man suggests releasing the habit of remaining emotionally suspended simply because you are waiting for everyone involved to become comfortable with the same truth. The star brings softness into those close relationships, especially where disappointment or distance has made hope feel fragile. A sincere conversation, a small act of consideration, or simply allowing someone to speak without immediately preparing your response can create room for healing. Justice then asks for something equally important: honesty that remains kind, boundaries that are clear without becoming cruel, and a willingness to recognize when peace is being created through mutual respect rather than through one person continually giving in. The Emperor strengthens that foundation within the family as well. You may find that healthy relationships need more than affection. They also need clear expectations, appropriate boundaries, and a sense that everyone has a place at the table. Your flexibility can help you adapt to different personalities, but you do not have to bend so far that you lose your own center, and that distinction can make the atmosphere around you feel steadier and more genuinely harmonious. Your emotional energy may also feel unusually heightened through this period, which means both the beautiful moments and the irritating ones can seem louder than usual. When you are especially sensitive to shifts in tone, silence, or body language, it becomes easy to attach meaning to something before you actually know what it means. If someone takes longer to answer a message, for example, give the situation room to breathe before deciding that something has gone wrong. This is where your emotional intelligence becomes especially valuable. You are capable of noticing subtle changes in people, but noticing something and knowing what it means are two different things, and giving yourself that distinction can save you from unnecessary worry. Sometimes the wisest response is to pause, let the atmosphere settle, and allow another person to show you through their actions what their intentions actually are. There is also wisdom in knowing when your voice is needed and when it is better to let silence do its quiet work. You do not have to comment on every tension, solve every misunderstanding, or smooth every uncomfortable moment simply because you can sense it. For Libra, emotional maturity can look like choosing the right moment to speak, rather than speaking simply to restore immediate comfort. At the same time, do not use patience as an excuse to keep swallowing something that genuinely needs to be addressed. If someone has crossed a boundary, if a conversation has been left unresolved, or if you know that staying silent is causing resentment to grow underneath the surface, find a calm way to name what is happening. You can be direct without becoming confrontational, and you can protect your peace without turning the situation into a battle. When an important proposal or conversation appears, give yourself permission to think before responding. A quick answer may create temporary ease, but a thoughtful answer is more likely to honor what you actually want, especially when another person's expectations are involved. Taking time is not indecision when you are using that space to separate your authentic response from the instinct to say whatever will keep everyone comfortable. For students, concentration may also require more preparation than usual. If your mind feels crowded or you find yourself reading the same material without absorbing it, do not immediately interpret that as failure or lack of ability. Give your nervous system a chance to settle first. Stretch for a few minutes, breathe slowly, step outside, or create a short ritual that tells your mind it is time to become present. You may not absorb everything at the same speed every day, and that does not mean you are falling behind. If your attention feels scattered, review what you already know, organize your notes, return to the material in smaller pieces, and allow steady progress to count as progress. You do not need to force yourself into perfect concentration. Sometimes learning begins by creating enough calm for your mind to stay in the room. In terms of compatibility, you may find especially meaningful exchanges with Gemini, Aquarius, and Leo energy. Gemini can meet you through conversation, curiosity, and the kind of easy mental connection that allows you to express what you feel without having to explain every part of it. Aquarius can offer a refreshing sense of independence, reminding you that a healthy connection can give both people room to remain fully themselves, while Leo may encourage you to be more open about your desires instead of waiting for someone else to notice what you need. Each of these energies can reveal a different side of balance for you. With Gemini, you may rediscover how healing, honest conversation can be. With Aquarius, you may understand that closeness does not have to mean losing your individuality. And with Leo, you may become more comfortable taking up emotional space and allowing yourself to be seen. This is not about predicting who you will connect with, but about recognizing the qualities that can help you build relationships where communication, freedom, warmth, and mutual respect can exist together. As you move through these themes, remember that balance is not something you have to create for everyone around you. Sometimes, it simply means being honest about what feels right, allowing certain relationships to come closer while giving others the space they need, and trusting yourself enough to make choices without constantly second-guessing them. You do not have to have every answer right now. You only need to stay close to what feels genuine as things continue to unfold. If you have someone with Gemini, Aquarius, or Leo energy around you, this may be a good time to enjoy the connection without placing too many expectations on it. A simple conversation, a shared laugh, or an honest exchange can reveal more than trying to predict where a relationship is headed. Pay attention to the people who bring ease into your life and make it possible for you to speak, feel, and exist naturally in their presence. Libra, thank you for spending this time with me and for giving yourself the space to pause and reflect. If something in this reading resonated with you, offered a fresh perspective, or helped you see a situation a little differently, I hope you carry that insight gently with you, rather than feeling the need to figure everything out at once. And if you enjoy being part of this community, you can support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, or turning on notifications for future readings. Every message, kind word, and quiet bit of support means a great deal and helps us continue creating these readings with care. Thank you again for being here, Libra. Take what feels meaningful, leave behind what does not, and give yourself permission to let the next part of your story unfold naturally.